Hello, it's Ozzie and I am here to tell you some of my favorite tips on weeding. How do you kill weeds naturally? So let's get right into it. There are a ton of awesome recipes for natural weed killing spray. But the problem with those is what happens when the weed is right next to your plant. Just like all these grasses and other weeds are right next to my garden. Natural weed killing sprays often cannot differentiate between plants and weeds. It kills everything. Now I know what you're thinking. What about the non-natural ones that can tell the difference between plants and weeds? I have to tell you, I never use any insecticides or herbicides or anything like that because I don't like them, okay? And I will never use them on my garden. I am all natural organic. So if sprays are out, what's the solution? It is simple. Pull the weeds. Yes, just plain old pulling out weeds or hoeing them is what I think of as the best method for getting rid of weeds, especially when they're right next to my beautiful plants. You may think, oh, I don't have time for this. It's too hard and time-consuming, but I am here to tell you my best tip that will turn weeding into a rewarding, stress-relieving, and satisfying activity. It's very simple too, you don't need much. So let's get into tip number 1. Choose the right time to weed your garden. I would definitely suggest weeding your garden in the late afternoon or early evening when it's shady. Because let me tell you, it is hot and brutal in the sun. I also suggest going out and weeding after you've done some mentally exhausting work. Maybe you've been working on the computer trying to figure things out when your brain is taxed and you're like, oh, I just need to go outside and step away. Because you don't need to think a lot when you're weeding. Don't let yourself think about the work you were just doing. Just weed. Pluck, put down. Pluck, put down. That's all you need to think about. Tip number 2. Collect the weeds. When you go to pull out a weed, collect the weed that you pulled out in a bucket. When you pull out weeds, it's always good to collect the weeds that you pull out and put them in a bucket, or in my case, an old planter. Because once you're all done and you look over your garden, it'll look so good without a bunch of dead weeds lying around. It'll be so rewarding when you just look out and see clear, perfectly neat plants with no dirty dead weeds. So yes, that's tip number 2. Collect the weeds that you pull out and don't just leave them lying on the ground. Tip number 3. Wait until the weeds are a certain size before you go to pluck them out. I suggest going into weed when the weeds are not super tiny. Because when they are really tiny, they're really annoying to pull out because you can barely get your little thumbs on them. So I suggest waiting until the weeds are about 2 inches to 3 inches tall before going in to pluck them out. This will make it a whole lot easier on your hands. You could even wait until they were about 4.5 inches tall. But only do this if your plants are doing well. If your plants are struggling for water, struggling to get bigger, then you definitely need to get rid of those weeds as soon as possible. But if everybody's doing okay, you can go ahead and wait until they're a little bit bigger and then pluck them out. As an example, you can see that my gourds right here are doing really good. They are beautifully green and getting big very quickly. And it's definitely time to weed them. But as you can see, it hasn't hurt the gourds at all to allow the weeds to get this big. Now I can pull these weeds out without crimping up my fingers. Of course, it's always best to have a weed-free garden, but I see nothing wrong with letting the weeds get about 2 to 3 inches taller so you don't crimp up and make your fingers sore trying to pull them out. Just trust me on this. You'll understand. Now that I have shared my tips, it is time to get these gourds weeded. It is going to be so satisfying to take out all these weeds, so let's get right to it. Whoa! As you can see, after a little while and a lot of emptyings of this pot, we now have a perfectly clear plot of gourds. We got all the icky weeds out, so now the gourds can flourish. And boy, they are already flourishing. Look at these strings, they're like monsters, giant. I think I'm gonna get some really great gourds this year. I hope you enjoyed this weed tip video, and I hope that you would have many happy hours of weeding your garden. Okay, I'm Ozzie, and it's time to say goodbye. Bye bye, buddy, bye, buddy, buddy, bye bye, ba 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 ba. Goodbye. Always remember to be happy. I'm Ozzie, buzzing away. Woo!
Let's go with Ozzie, Kwee the bee, and learn some gardening. Plants, flowers, it doesn't matter, we'll get better. It's only the beginning now, so let's sow our seeds and pluck the weeds, and let the sun do the rest.